Hey Saka, KJ Saka. Stiff competition up here. Alright, this next one goes out to all my hip-hop heads. Hip-hop heads, where you at? Give it up for ill.Gates. I might have one more. You guys want to see the last battle? Okay, since this is the last fucking battle and I'm going first, this song's called Win This Fucking War. Mayhem Shit remix, here we go. final round from KJ Saka. Give it up, everyone, make some noise!
You know, the battling is fun, but collaborating is a lot more fun. And, you know, competing with each other is really just a way to push ourselves to be as, you know, as fun as possible. Because really, you know, all this stuff that we do is it's just all about inspiring other people to live creatively and, you know, to make the most of their lives. So battling does it, collaboration does it, all kinds of things do it. But really, it's just all about inspiring you guys to kick ass. So here is our first record that we made together. The tune is called Unsung Heroes. Or wait, are we at mix 6? Is mix 6 the one to play? Or here you have a master, don't you? Original.
We got a master.
Yeah, here's the original, the master version.
Yeah, it's the original one.
Okay, yeah, it just shows up as mix 6. Okay, so this is our.
So
we wrote this track at KJ's house in pretty much one marathon, multi-day session of just grinding.
It was brutal.
Yeah, because we wanted to make a track that was going to be, you know, really, really fun and melodic, but also heavy and really be like something that we could play every set, you know? And writing a track just for fun is one thing, but writing something you're actually gonna play all the time is a bit more of a challenge. And you definitely have to go the extra mile to make something that you're gonna play every set. But I feel that we did it, and this is it.
This training is ridiculous, KJ. It's never enough for you.
I need this. This is who I am. Ain't nothing to it but to do it.
Of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be predictable.
Here we go! you so much, Shambhala.
All right, so before we get into the project folder, right? Basically, I want you all to remember when we made the super loop, when I told you about making the super loop and the 3 melodies on top of each other. So basically, when we were jamming to make our track, we jammed and jammed and jammed until we found this synth riff, right? Right? So that we were like, okay, yeah, that's a good starting point. I could listen to that a lot of times, right? So then from there, we added these layers. Here, from there, we added these layers. And you can see those are all just super basic, shitty default patches. And if you can get your melody to sound good because of the notes and because of the way the melodies fit together with terrible patches, then you'll be able to do it with good patches. So this was me jamming in a separate project, and then I brought that back into the main project. So here, I'm just gonna open up the final one here. Yeah. And then, but yeah, so I just wanted to let you know that that was, you know, melodically, that was basically where it all started. And, you know, that was a separate stage. So just remember that project folder exists, and remember about the super loop technique and the interlocking melodies and everything. And then KJ, oh wait, this is all stems. Yeah, we should go back to before stems.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so here, why don't you start talking about the setting everything up for all that to happen.
So we got into the studio, and we'd never worked together before, and we're like, okay, let's make a track. Okay, cool. And I'm like, you know, I'm like, how about let's just make it easy? I do most of the drums, and you start with a lot of the melodies and start sample digging. We're like, sweet, let's do that. So for the past couple of years, I've been starting my sessions from another session that I created. So I created like one of the last tracks that I released. I like the mix down. I like my groupings of all the keyboards. I like my groupings of all the mid basses. I liked my groupings of all the sub basses. I liked how the drums fit and everything. I liked how it all sound mix down wise. I like what was on the master track. I liked all the EQs. You spend loads and loads of time, hours and hours and hours, days and weeks, fine tuning these frequencies of each instrument. And so what I did, so let's say this is my old track.
Yeah, it's still loading.
It's still loading.
Yeah, that's the stem mix.
Oh, okay.
But basically, he was using a track before as like a template. So some of the stuff that we were gonna keep to, you know, like what I was saying about daytime and nighttime sessions, where you don't want to have to like reinvent the wheel for every single part there. You know, so he loaded up this other track and then deleted all of the sequencer data so that it was just empty. And the only things that were left were all of the instruments themselves and the mix of the instruments, but there's no MIDI, no audio, nothing, just like a empty blank slate for us to start with, but with all of these other ingredients ready.
That's right. So I had keyboard patches in there, I had sub bass already in there, so we could just play, we could be musical. You know, when you have somebody over, you know, you want to come up with great sounds right away. Oh, why don't you put a keyboard patch on that? Okay, cool, I got one right here. Okay, sweet. You know, it's kind of like having a stock keyboard with all kinds of great presets. So that's kind of what the session was from one of my other tracks.
And it's a zoom and cue, they're like right next to each other. It's very easy to do.
And so this was not a light session. So right off the bat, we had tons of processing. I probably had 6 different serum patches in there, probably maybe 15 massive patches in there. Several drum racks, multiple drum racks in there. We had samplers in there, but with no sounds. They're basically, you know, there's presets that we made, but then there's no nothing in the sequencer. And so it was an easy way to start. I'm like, I already have a great kick drum. I'm just gonna load up a great kick drum. I already know I got all these great snare drums with EQs already on them. I'm just gonna quickly, as fast as I can, create a beat and get something moving. And so that's kind of what we did. So I created this. So I kept all my markers here. It says start, build, drop, break down, build. And of course this is slightly different from how I started, but when this was all empty, basically all I did was go like that, and I pressed delete in my other tune. And then I go save as, I go ill.KJ, new track. So that's how, in a nutshell, I started it. And with all these marker points still there, so we already had kind of a layout of a tune, we just had to build it. We didn't have to start with a brand new kick drum, taking forever to make some shitty kick sound great, or something like that. In the recording world, I'm sure you guys have heard the term polishing a turd. And it can be very time consuming. I mean, honestly, it's always polishing a turd. That's what you're always doing. And knit sound, it's not the sound that you're going for. With one oscillator, you want to have 3 oscillators. You want to have some filters. So you're constantly polishing turds. They're all turds. So, but we wanted to create as many turds as possible. We wanted to create a whole.
We wanted already
turds.
Polished turds.
Yeah.
Start
we already
with the
had
shiniest turds we could muster.
We had some shiny turds in here. That's for sure. So now, one of the ways. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just do a couple things that I love to do from the very get-go. And is just load in a track, an already done track. So I'm just going to load in.
Yeah, you'll notice also that there's lots of different versions of the saves, right? That's really, really, really important to do because then you can engage in a process called destructive editing, which is basically where you sample things and then delete them and, make audio edits and then just print it down and being consolidating to a new file all the time. And, once you start getting used to working in audio, you'll find that editing destructively is really great. You get some of your best results from destructive audio editing, but sometimes you might want to go back. Now, so usually these saves they'll have different names like last save before we delete massive or whatever, right? And it will tell you kind of what happened immediately preceding that save and where that's at. And sometimes you'll go back and you'll drag a part out and sample it again or whatever. But it's just really good. There's also Ableton files get corrupted sometimes, and sometimes your changes don't make the track better. Sometimes they make it worse. So it's nice to have all these different iterations available so that you can be freely destructive and delete things, because delete is just such an important part of the songwriting process. And you don't want your processor to be all bogged down all the time, so you should be very, very liberal with the use of delete. And having all these different saves really gives you the opportunity to be destructive.
That's right. Exactly right. Destructing audio is very important. But if you destruct something that you're freaking loving making and you can't go back, then it feels like the end of the world sometimes. You're like, oh my God, I just spent 16 hours or something, whatever, on this tune, and now my massive patch is gone, and I have this, it sounds horrible still, and I can't figure out how to fix it. I wish I would have saved it before. So that definitely save multiple ALS files in Ableton, session files. So basically, this is kind of how I start a tune for the last year or so with this template that I've kind of created from my tune. All this would be blank, and then I would chuck in 2 songs. Here's 1 song. And so this is my mixed down reference. This is what I want the song to sonically sound like. The sub, the drums, within reference of what we're gonna make. So So that's a destroyed track, really heavy EDM
Jeez
stuff.
Louise.
Yeah, yeah. And our track obviously doesn't sound like that, but like, where's the sub sitting? Where's the snare drum sitting? You know, how much side chain can you really hear ducking when the snare comes in on your sub? Where's the mid basses sitting? Where's the melody? Where's the keyboards in the mix sonically? How far apart are they? You really need to, this is called A-being. I know this is just a basic concept, but it's huge for me in the studio. And then I usually put another track right here, and that's for like the vibe. Like, I don't give a shit about the mix down quality, but like, I want the vibe. You know, you could just stick a Beatles song in there or whatever, because whatever vibe that you want to create, you can kind of mimic that a little bit, or just like try to duplicate the exact same thing, you know? Like, I've definitely taken our destroyed tracks and tried to create the exact same song, and in the end, it turns out completely different. Maybe the sub sounds the same. Usually sub always sounds the same anyways. But, you know, that's one aspect that I like about this is to try, actually that's kind of how I got this. I wanted to try to create the exact same sound, and in the end, it was totally freaking different. So that's kind of like a really big nugget of advice that I always give people when they send me tracks and they're like, hey, what do you think of my track? Do you like the mix down? I'm like, go A-B your track side by side, stick your finished track right here, your master track. What is the difference between these tracks? Is the bass, what's going on with the bass? You know, because sometimes you listen to your track, you love in your track, you're in love with your track. You made your track out of all the freaking love of music that you have, the melodies that you like, the beats that you like, the snares and kicks that you love, but something's not sitting right, something doesn't sound right. So you put it side by side to your favorite track, and you're like, holy shit, my snare drum sounds like shit. I do that every day. Even when I finally come up with a great snare drum that somebody's like, I love your snare drum, there's plenty of turds, let me tell you. Plenty. So that's kind of how I started. That's the arrangement, and I don't want to get too deep about that. And so that's how we started. And Dylan had another session open which he just showed you, creating these melodies. And I threw in some drum beats. I started creating with the drum patterns. And he was flying me over MIDI notes through Dropbox. And I was chucking in these MIDI notes.
And KJ had rendered me a copy of the beat, so that I just had one audio copy of the beat to jam over and create these additional melody parts. I also write a lot of my melody parts by playing and having a zero latency environment in which to actually jam is very important, because I'm sure you'll notice that as soon as you have like a couple hundred plugins running in Ableton, it starts running really slow and you get all kinds of latency, right? So having another jamming environment where you have a render of your beat and you can jam over that where there's only a couple plugins open is really, really essential. And this project file, like, it's not like we just had one Ableton session where the whole thing was created. There's another stem mix session where we finalize. There was my split off project where I was jamming and creating melodies, and other kind of audio tasks at separate projects. So a lot of the time, your project folder will have many different Ableton sessions in it that are all, related, but a lot of the time it's not happening all in one place.
Exactly, and this is not how we write with our solo music either. I'll usually write in one session. I'm sure you don't have multiple sessions, like maybe just a writing and then the mix down session, or maybe you do, but I'm sure
I usually have a separate one so that I can play with my hands, because
nice.
It's really, the latency is just terrible.
That's a really good thing, and that's one of the reasons why we mixed it down. So I here's the first beat that I chucked in all these beats, and then let's see here. So that's the beat.
It's probably got some faraway rack on it or something.
So
That wily faraway rack.
Just real quick, these are all my original beats, and I create these huge loop packs that are like gigs and gigs and gigs of my live drumming. And this beat is a beat of me in the studio that had, you know, tons of mics on the kick drum, snare drum mics, the whole shebang on a full drum set. And I went through many, many, many sessions and many, many series of processing to get these loops. And then anytime I want to create a brand new track or create a collaboration with somebody, it's super easy for me to just grab one of these loops, and it already sounds pretty decent. The EQ is pretty much there. And then I completely, so here's the EQ, it's nice and flat, and then I'll just take that beat and I'll just go like that with the EQ, and then I'll add a huge kick, and I'll add a huge snare, and I'll add hi-hats on top of that. If I was creating like rock music or something like that, I'd probably just make this beat the entire beat for the entire song. But since this is electronic music, it's very, I never just take one beat, one stereo beat and make it the beat. I always add a huge kick, huge snare, hi-hats, and everything to it. So that was like the vibe, the rhythmic vibe of it. So I sent that to you, and he started just jamming on it, all kinds of different jamming.
Cool. So that was it was really, really excellent to have, you know, such organized libraries for this process, because the track was, you know, like pretty much 3 12+ hour days of writing all in a row. You know, so having these tools, like anytime you can shave off of that is awesome, you know. So having all these tools and having all these libraries prepared was really, really helpful. So I went into this other project and I was jamming and making melodies. And I was just gonna show you guys a couple different cool things that you can learn about jamming and about making melodies and stuff. So here, we'll go back into this project. Do I save the changes? Yeah, I'll save the changes, I guess. Okay.
It's done. It's rewritten.
So in this other project, I was digging through, you know, samples of vinyl to try and find really sweet chords, and I was also digging through MIDI files. And a lot of people, like when they're digging for samples, they think of just audio for sampling. But you can actually sample MIDI files and do a lot of really cool things by like cutting up and editing MIDI files. And if you go online, there are all different websites where you can get the MIDI files for like, you know, anything from like, you know, Bach to like Bob Marley or whatever. And then you can see what the exact notes are that are being used in these chords. And once you start like cutting the MIDI up and flipping it backwards and time stretching it and rearranging it and stuff, you end up with a completely different song. But using MIDI files as a starting resource as well as samples will really help you to kind of hack music theory. You know, like I'm not a really good piano player, I actually only started finger drumming like as a kind of challenge to myself in 2013. You know, I wanted to have an instrument I could play on stage. And I was actually interviewing KJ, and one of the questions I asked him was, if you had 2 weeks to train me for a battle, what would you have me do, you know? And I think that's kind of where the idea for the battle sort of started. But yeah, and then, you know, fast forward a year and I'm battling him. It was definitely very, you know, sink or swim kind of thing, but it was a lot of fun. And, you know, definitely it's good to challenge yourself, you know, jump in way before you're ready and just figure it out. All right, so where's our beat? I think we have, yeah, here's our beat. So this is the session where the beat's happening, and then we had these 808s. Right? And then I jammed to get these MIDI files. But to get these MIDI files, I was using Ableton Push to basically limit the scale that I was in such that there were no wrong notes, and I basically made like, you know, a kind of like playground for my hands to jam in. You can do that with Machine too, where you know, make sure that there's no wrong notes left on the keyboard for yourself. But I'm gonna show you like just a much simpler way to sample MIDI. So I'm just gonna take this file called beat, And I'm just gonna go and get a MIDI file and cut it up. So let's close, all of our melodies are muted, yep. The hook's muted, everything is muted. Okay, cool. So now I have like an environment where everything's muted and there's just drums. Right? So what I'm gonna do, actually I'm gonna get rid of that 808 as well. I'm gonna go and just get a really simple, basic patch here so that we can explore the chords of a melody. And I find, when you're trying to pick out the chords and the scales of things, using just these super, super basic patches that are, here, a grand piano classic, great. So this is like, I'm not gonna be able to get carried away with the sound design and stuff here because it's just a basic piano sound. And this really helps to concentrate on the actual notes and the emotions and the chords and the way things fit together as opposed to being like, oh my God, that bass sound sounds amazing. Let's tweak it for 10 hours, right? So in my user library, I've got all these clips here. Let's see, in my 2014 library, I made all these clips, and there's all these different chord sets here. And these are all chord sets from songs that I've liked or, different things to check out. Let's see what's in here. This is, so here, let's sample, this is a Bob Marley chord progression. Oh. Okay, it takes a bit to get started. Let's fast forward that. Okay, so. Right, so there's all these nice little melody bits. And they're all available to be sampled. So check it out. So I'm gonna keep this guy here just as a reference, and I'm gonna start cutting this file up. So I wanna grab this chord, all right? So I'm gonna grab that chord, and I'm going to take it, so it's got just that chord in this MIDI file, and I'm gonna crop it by going Command J, or maybe it'll make me right clip, yeah. Okay, so then crop, and then extend until, let's extend this so it's really long. And then I wanna make this like an MPC style pad. So I'm gonna go to key learn, set that to the 1 key, right? And now if I wanna make this an MPC style pad that I can play, I'll go to the launch properties, set the launch mode to gate, and the quantization to none. And now, whenever I press the 1 key, that chord will play, right? So now I can find a different chord from the same song, go to this chord, and then I'm going to go here and just drag my end marker in, then crop the clip. Hey, come on now. Oh, it's a silly loop. Okay, there we go. Take that off. Crop. There we go. And then make it really, really long. And then same thing, launch mode, gate, quantization, none. And now, here I'll key learn the rest of these guys. So I'll go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so now, right? So you can cut a melody up into all these different cue points. And, okay, launch mode, gate, quantization, none. And these samples, right? And it's the like sampling, right? And then when you got your beat, right? And then you can make a melody out of another melody, right? So it's a very, very simple, really powerful technique that you can use with your own MIDI melodies too. Like let's say, your riff is like that, like in that track, that like da-da-da-da-da, that could be one of the clips or whatever. And if you have all these different clips, you can make something that you can kind of play and mess around with and try like rhythmically rearranging the notes or whatever until you develop an entirely new chord progression, an entirely new melody, an entirely new vibe by sampling the actual MIDI files, right? So this MIDI sampling technique is really a great hack to kind of get around any gaps in your music theory. And, I really encourage you to check out some of the MIDI files that you can find online. There's this one archive that someone made that has literally 130,000 MIDI files. And you can go in through classical music, pop music, whatever. And for some weird reason, people aren't all anal about MIDI file copyright. I don't know why. It seems like that would be a thing that people would care about, but they don't. So you can just find all these MIDI files easily. Just Google and sample them. There's video game websites, like some of those chord progressions. A lot of that old chip music didn't have any possibilities for doing sound design. It was just like the general MIDI sound set in whatever Nintendo, and people got super creative in making all these different, even just beats where like short white noise burst is kick, long white noise burst is snare, like, it's like crazy, the things that people came up with. But you can get all these MIDI files and take them apart and kind of generate your own riffs. And then once you get your riffs sounding good with just super basic patches, then you're stoked. So I jammed, sampled, dug through all my archives and stuff until we ended up here. And you can mute any of these melodies and they'll still or you can solo any of these melodies and they'll still make sense outside of the context of the rest of the track. That was a hook. This was a hook. And they all still make sense by themselves, but they will interlock, and that's where you get that kind of super loop theory for arranging. So I jammed here, created those melodies, and then we were like, great, let's get those into the other project and start really, sound designing them and jamming and doing all these different things. So we're kind of like quickly mixing as we go, just by like high passing everything, maybe a little bit of compression here and there, or adjusting the width with the utility plugin, but not a whole lot of mixing during the actual writing process. We were trying to keep to writing while we were writing, and starting from a good foundational mix that KJ had established with the drums and the sub and everything. That a lot of that mix was built into the template. And then when we were bringing these sounds in, we're focusing more on finding the right sound for the right spot. Because a lot of mixing comes down to sound choice, It's not like that's probably your most powerful mixing tool. And if you have like a bunch of sounds that are all coming from the same synthesizer, all in the same frequency range, yeah, it's going to be hard to pick them apart from each other. But if your sounds come from a diversity of sources where one of them is from an old analog synth, one of them's a sample from a record, one of them's like, Razor or Massive or something super digital, one of them's really clumpy MIDI-wise, one of them's just one long note, one of them's a unquantized thing that you played on a hand drum with a mic, one of them's just a straight up sine wave. That just is sweeping through frequencies. Some of them are bent, some of them are not bent, etc. And you make your sounds diverse and you make your composition minimal, the mix is going to take care of itself in a lot of ways because you've just chosen sounds that fit together and they're not trying to be the same thing, they're diverse sounds. And yeah, they're not trying to compete for space in your mix. They're complementing each other by being diverse, So that really, yep. Just start Googling MIDI files. You'll find it. Yeah. He was asking which specific MIDI file was. I don't know if I can legally recommend it to you anyway, so I don't know. Just Google, man. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so we had these melodies and we had the beats, and KJ had engineered the beats to be ready for the melodies, and we brought the melodies and started muting and unmuting things until we had this arrangement of the song. And then we were just like ruthlessly deleting things, trying as many different ideas as we could, trying to get all the sections working together and just we just hammered it out. But pretty much most of the creative stuff happened in the first like 10 to 15 hours. And then, it takes about 20% of the effort to get a track 80% of the way, and then the other 80% of the effort to get it done. And that's like, it's just such a big thing. And that's why, you should always finish what you start, especially the beginning, because the skill is finishing, and you got to, like, when you're practicing or expanding your skills, you should practice with a purpose, and really be learning as you're doing, be learning as you're finishing things, Nighttime sessions, it's fun to fuck around a bit, but if you're going to do any learning during the daytime session, finish that track. And if something's worth starting, it's worth finishing. And you also, like, let's say you just start a lot of things until you find that one thing that you really want to finish. Well, if you haven't been finishing things the whole time, you're going to be rusty and unskilled at finishing things. And then that awesome thing that you wanted to finish is not going to get finished very well because you don't know how to finish things, right? So it's really important to, like, finish what you start, and that's the real skill, because that slog of, the last, like, more than half of production is just getting everything right. It takes a lot of work. You're going to have to drink a lot of coffee and really stay focused. It's tough. Yeah, there's a question?
Yeah, question. When you guys were doing the collaboration, going back and looking at that, do you feel like it was, there would be anything you would change as far as, like, two machines, like, hey, I'm working over here, or who's driving with the mouse?
Okay,
That's always
so yeah, the question was if there's anything, looking back on the collaborative process, if there's anything that we change about it. I don't think so. We didn't end up going down any dead ends or anything in this session. Like, it was all, it was definitely, I think it happened about as quickly as it could possibly happen.
We made a choice. I have got a iMac home studio computer, and he brought over his laptop. Right away, let's use my home studio computer as the main session, and we'll use this as the floating live rig. He can plug machine into it. With the iMac, it's like annoying. You got to go behind it and plug all the crap in and whatnot. So we're like, let's my machine as the main session, and this as our jamming idea session, and that's kind of how we started.
Yes.
We kept it that way.
So we were both kind of tag teaming the main studio computer, but taking turns, like, splitting off, because it really, there inherently has to be a bit of backseat driving going on when you're making important decisions like the arrangement and blah, blah, blah. But it's also very, very important to give your fellow collaborator the space that they need to finish their ideas, and you're not so that you're not getting in there while they're halfway to some objective and being like, oh, no, that gives me an idea, get out of the way. You can't do that. And it's really like finding the balance between both getting your ideas out and, finishing the ideas that you start. And that's really where the second computer comes in, because a lot of the time it's really nice to have that second station where you're just making risers or splashes or digging for sounds or, whatever, right? It's really nice to have that second session.
This training is ridiculous, KJ. It's never enough for you.
I need this. This is who I am.
Ain't nothing to it but to do it.
odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all. That unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Go, 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 go,